Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Cybersecurity Weekly. My name is Fred Cobb. I am your host. I'm Executive Vice President and CISO for Info Systems. And today we have Rob Ashcraft, Senior Cyber Strategist, on the line with me. Rob, welcome aboard. Appreciate you coming in once again.
Yes, thanks for having me on another episode. As everyone can clearly see, we're still sheltering at home, so we have we've blurred our backgrounds here a little bit to exercise good best practices for security, right?
Absolutely. And I did try on a button-down shirt earlier, and I was pleasantly surprised that it still fit. So I think it's the first time I put a button down on since the 1st of March when we went into hibernation. But so I was pretty happy about that. But let's get right into it. So we've been with Rob, we've been exploring a couple of different themes on our podcast. We've been talking about the various Center for Internet Security, critical security controls. I think we just wrapped up control number 5, talking about hardening systems and looking at things like DISA-STIGs and CIS benchmarks. Riveting episode if you haven't listened in or watched it. It's very informative, so please tune in. But today we're going to shift back to one of the other themes that we've been covering here on the series, and that is thinking about career in cybersecurity. We started off with our inaugural episode around becoming a cybersecurity professional, talking about all the different areas that you could explore, talking about, Rob, what we covered last time. We covered offensive security, being a pen tester, being a social engineer.
We did talk about the cyber offensive roles.
Yeah, so that was a real good episode, but there's so many different ways you can take your career whenever you're thinking about whether you're having that midlife crisis, you're looking for a career change, or you're coming out of school, or you're getting ready to go into school, and cybersecurity is something that interests you, and you think about, what does it really mean? How can I take this career? Well, so many different directions. So let's spend a few minutes of our time today talking about becoming a cybersecurity defender. We talked about being on the offense in the previous episode. Let's talk about being on the defense today and some of the things that ties into that particular facet of cybersecurity. So, Rob, I'll let you start off here. Just if I were to say, hey, Rob, I understand you're a cyber defender. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, sure. So the people in these roles are really focused, as you can imagine, on defensive measures. So that would be prevention against attacks, detection of attacks, response to attacks, essentially collecting information from all kinds of sources to identify events that are happening within the network that could be possible attacks or nefarious activity, analyzing that information, reporting events that have occurred or might occur within the network. And so it's a little more of a reactive role, but we like to use terms now like zero-day defense, where our reaction time is getting so quickly and our tools are sharp that we can react immediately to any type of attacks. And we're also sort of looking ahead proactively toward possible attacks that could come. So we're taking, these roles are taking measures, to defend against those types of attacks. They protect the data, they protect the information systems, the network from threats. These roles have to understand a lot of different computing environments, whether that be a computing environment for manufacturing or for retail or for CPA firm. They're all very different, and so they have to understand the computing environment they're working within, as well as the operational environment, and then be able to layer the defense in layers, as what we like to say, into that environment. So it's a really important role.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of areas there. Think about the typical SOC, Security Operations Center, and who mans the SOC? Well, it's SOC analysts. What they're typically doing, they're not out there in an offensive way doing any sort of red teaming, or they're not in attack mode. What they're doing is exactly what you mentioned a moment ago. They're looking for zero-day threats. They're looking at behavioral analysis. They're looking at the rules that have been built into the security incident and events monitoring, the SIM tool. So they are becoming adept at that type of tool usage. But you mentioned intrusion detection. That's really right up the SOC analyst alley. And that's
Yes.
certainly a good, I won't say it's just an entry point, but a lot of people will start out in their cybersecurity career working in a SOC analyst role. And it helps them to get that foundational knowledge underneath them to go off and explore, more complex or more technical roles down the road. So
agreed. I've heard it called sometimes a security analyst or cyber defense analyst, but certainly that's one of the, if you want to call it entry, none of these are really entry because you have to have some technical knowledge behind you just to parlay into these type of roles. But certainly that's a good starting point. Incident responder, a cybersecurity technical support specialist, some other areas like that. They're in the defense side of things.
We'll be back with the Cybersecurity Weekly podcast after we pause for this special message. Security analysts believe cyber attacks will continue to escalate throughout 2020 and are recommending that every company, regardless of industry or size, place immediate focus on cybersecurity training and the tools that will protect you from these attacks. Did you know that you can book a cybersecurity assessment right now with Fred Cobb's team of cybersecurity engineers at InfoSystems? They will help you discover exactly where you are most vulnerable to a cyber attack and make recommendations on how to strengthen your defense in those areas. This is urgent. It's an issue that affects everyone in our community. Visit the InfoSystems website at www.infosystems.biz to request your cybersecurity assessment. Now back to the podcast.
yeah, absolutely. And I don't, when I said, a SOC analyst is one of those entry-level positions, that's in no way belittling the, what the importance of that role happens to be, because you are, in a lot of cases, you're
sure.
that first line of defense. You're looking at what's happening and you're analyzing information coming in log file format or what the SIM might be telling you. And you're doing notifications. Hey, there's something happening here. And if you were not, adept in doing that job, something might go unnoticed and some real damage could occur. So it's a very important role. You touched on just a second ago too, incident response. I know we do some rapid response work at InfoSystems where companies will be in the midst of, say, a ransomware attack. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about, some of the things that happens in a typical incident response or rapid response situation.
Well, often it's we encounter these situations. It's a customer we've not worked with before. It's not the way we like to get new customers, but it is part of the business, and we do like to help people that are in a tight situation. It's never a good time when somebody's been attacked. Their systems are down. If it's awesome ransomware or really bad malware infection in their system. But our job is to go in and immediately, quote, if you would, stop the bleeding. And get those things shut down, then begin an analysis to identify what happened, where it happened, to mitigate that, and then begin working on correcting some things in the network, finding other areas that may have been gaps that caused that particular issue, or in some cases we see things that immediately off the top that we can help them with just general defense and so we start coming back with recommendations and implementing those.
Yeah, and this particular individual that's responsible for responding to cyber incidents, they have to have a working knowledge of how to get containment in play so that we can quickly do some isolation of a particular device on the network or a particular group of machines, or how to isolate a system so it can't do further damage. At the same time, doing some preservation. So, at the end of the, putting out the flames, what you want to try to get to quickly is root cause. How did this enter into the environment? What particular strain of ransomware it might be, or some other type of attack. So you've got the containment piece that you need to be knowledgeable about. You've got the eradication piece that you need to be knowledgeable about. You've got the root cause or the postmortem analysis that you need to be knowledgeable about. So it's I hate it for our customers that we respond to that are in the midst of that, like you mentioned. But I love the fact that we're going in there. We're basically the firefighting unit. In a lot of cases, we are putting out the flames. We're getting control of the situation. We're doing rescue operations. And also tied to that is something we're going to talk about in a later episode is the technical writing aspect of an incident response, is having that incident response plans. But we'll cover that in an upcoming episode. But I think about too, Rob, we talked about incident response. We talked about the role of a SOC analyst, just the ability to apply some engineering. Let's say you've got a new firewall, you're unboxing it today. Would you say a firewall is an example of cyber defense?
Oh, absolutely. So in the cyber defense role, they really have to have knowledge of all the solutions, the best solutions for different components of a layered defense. So firewalling, antivirus, next-gen antivirus, IDS, IPS, SIM technology, FIM technology, wireless, DLP, MFA. I mean, it goes on and on, right? And so these type of cyber defenders or these roles have to have knowledge and stay up to date on these, not only of the existing ones, but things that are coming out in the future and that may be better. And as we know, technology is always improving, and we're finding better ways to defend. So they stay on top of part of what we do as a cyber services company is to stay on top of those technologies and test those and see if there's a better mousetrap, right, and a better way to defend. So these cyber defense professionals all work within those. I think the other part is just basic security practices. They understand things like the CIS-20. They understand things like NIST. They're in touch with organizations like ISACA or ISA, staying up to date. They have information feeds coming up, or they're staying up to date on identifying vulnerabilities and new variants and things like that. So there's a lot to the job. There's a lot of variety in it, and it's broken down into different roles. We've mentioned some. There's other things like cybersecurity consulting, network security engineering, cybersecurity architecture, things like that. So the cyber defense roles are really fascinating and a very needed component in the whole IT landscape.
Absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned referring back to some of the hardening. So it ties back into our previous podcast on CIS control number 5, talking about those hardening guidelines. So a cyber defender might be responsible for implementing a particular STIG or a particular CIS benchmark. So you can see it's a well-rounded, piece, like you said, of the whole cybersecurity landscape. And there's many people out there making careers out of being cyber defenders. And it's certainly worthy of looking into for those of you out there that are interested in a cybersecurity position that has defense elements to it or defensive elements to it. So great stuff. Rob, I guess that's about time for us to wrap today, but we certainly have had a good discussion. What we're going to do in upcoming episodes, we want to talk about some of the other roles. Another biggie is the cyber engineer. You mentioned that term just a moment ago, but we're going to talk about all the engineering aspects of cybersecurity, from deployment to design and all those things in between. So another possible career path inside of cyber security. We're talking about that, and then we have, podcast or future podcasts. We're going to be covering CIS benchmark in more detail, and then jumping into the CSC control number 6. So I can't wait. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited about that. So, but let's go ahead and wrap it today. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in, either watching the video or listening to the podcast. We really appreciate it. We appreciate the great feedback we've been getting. Our, pool of listeners it's really growing. So we certainly appreciate that. And if there are any topics that you want to have discussed, please contact us and let us know. We'll bring those up in future podcast shows. So, Rob, again, thanks for participating, and we'll see you on the next couple of podcasts. You're going to be hanging out with me on those as well.
Very much. I appreciate it.
All righty. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you next time. Goodbye.